Ate Bene. So today we're obviously in Window Rock, and I am meeting with a retired law enforcement officer. She's been as part of the Navajo Nation Police Department, but also has been very active with the community as well. So before I take up anybody else's time, let's go do this.
Yate.
Appreciate you coming down and meeting me here.
Sure. My name is Francine Bradley Arthur. My clans are Totoch'ini, Kia'ani, Senjikina, and Ashi. I grew up here in Window Rock, so I lived probably over half my life here. Now, a resident of the Navajo Nation. So this is my hometown.
Nice. All right, so you grew up on the Navajo Nation. Where specifically did you grow up?
Over in Fort Defiance, which is 5 miles north of here. And we grew up in, well, we started, I moved here when I was probably about maybe 6 years old, first grade.
Yeah.
We moved from Kayenta. That's where my dad, Frank Bradley Jr. is from. And my mom is Evelyn Bradley. She was a Navajo Nation, when she retired, she was a Navajo Nation judge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she worked her way up from a secretary to a human resources director to a Navajo Nation judge.
Wow.
So, yeah, so
that's a long way to move up.
Yeah. And
okay.
we moved here when I was in first grade. I was so heartbroken coming from Kayenta because in kindergarten, when you got to first grade, you got to go to a trip to Phoenix Zoo.
Oh, okay.
So my mom and dad says, we're moving, and I didn't get to go to the Phoenix Zoo in first grade.
You missed that opportunity.
Yes. So then we moved here, lived here in Window Rock, had a rented house, and we eventually moved to Fort Defiance, lived in a trailer court. Yes, grew up in a trailer court. But that's where we made connections. Met a lot of my friends, our family friends, where my mom and dad worked. We got to know their fellow people, their fellow employees.
Yeah.
And I went to Fort Defiance school in Fort Defiance, went to elementary school here in Window Rock, all the way to high school. And I graduated high school from Window Rock.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah.
And then after you graduated, what was next on your agenda?
Going to college. What's really different now than when I was in school was when I started high school, we were already told in 9th grade that you're going to college.
Yeah.
So we had a career counselor. We were hooked up with a counselor. So all through high school, we were being told, you got to pick a career, figure out where you want to go to college, what you want to do.
Yeah.
So by the time we were in our junior year, they were preparing us to go to school, go to college. And by the senior year, you were, figured out where you want to go. What college you want to go to. You got into school.
Yeah.
And this was in 1981.
Okay. That's when I was born.
Hey, we have something in common.
Yeah, there you go.
So in the 1981, most of my senior class, we went to college. That was what was in our future.
Yeah.
So I went to a 2-year college. I went to Central Arizona College for 2 years. I wanted to originally study and become a lawyer.
Yeah.
And when I went to that junior college, they did have that program. But unfortunately, while I was there, they didn't have enough students for the classes, so they canceled them.
Okay.
So they said I had to change my major. So I was like, wow, what do I change this to? What do I do? So they told me, the counselor down there told me that you have enough credit hours to go into criminal justice.
Oh, okay,
so I said, okay, I'll go for it. So I did, and started studying criminal justice. So I met students from different places in Arizona that I never knew about. Then this is the first time I ever saw twin brothers. I met twin brothers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's like, wow, know, so it was really eye-opening, and just learned about a lot of things.
Like the only twins you knew was the Hero twins.
Yeah, it's almost like the hero, and actually they were really cool. They were like the Hero twins. So I got to interact with other cultures, other races, you know, learn about who they are, where they come from, and just understand all that. So I transferred to NAU. I transferred to Northern Arizona University. And back then, it was fortunate that it didn't cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
And my parents were...
It was still small then,
Yeah.
too.
So we were able to afford my education. I wasn't always a good student.
Yeah.
I was an average student. I was a kid that sat in back of the class.
Oh, okay.
And because I got made fun of, I got told I wasn't Navajo because I didn't look Navajo. I have freckles.
Oh.
Because
okay,
I'm tall.
okay. Yeah.
Because I'm tall. I even have hair on my arms.
Oh, okay.
So I learned, I researched my own family tree.
Yeah.
And I found out that my great Nelly man was a full-blooded Irishman.
Oh,
And
okay.
he came here to...
Interesting.
Yeah, he came here to the reservation after, I think, World War II. And he came to Fort Wingate, and he got a trading post license. So he came out here to start a trading post. And I understand he started, I think it's either the one in Round Rock or Rough Rock. And then he started one in Chichimito.
Okay.
And he met a Navajo woman, which is my great Nelly lady. I can never remember her name. But I found out she's from Shiprock area, south of Shiprock, Table Mesa area.
Yeah.
And they got married. And I was fortunate that some people are my relatives to have pictures of them. And my great Nelly man was as tall as a Hogan. So I went to NAU, kept studying criminal justice. And I already had 2 older brothers and a brother-in-law that were in law enforcement. So I thought, wow, what am I going to do after I graduate? So I got through college, I graduated, and then I decided, well, I need a job. So I went to Phoenix to try to get a job, and I was thinking, you know, I got an education, I got all this stuff. But when I went to apply for jobs, I didn't have the experience, so they didn't hire me. So I went back to school and studied business for a couple semesters. And then I think it was in end of 1987, end of 1988, I decided it's time to go home.
Yeah.
So that's when I decided, you know what, maybe you should be a police officer. So my brother, my middle brother, he was the sergeant in Kayenta. So he says, go for it, you know, put in your application, we need officers. So I moved home, and my mom at the time just had learned about, what do you call it, peyote ceremonies.
Yeah.
So she had one. I told her, so I told my mom and dad, I want to be a police officer. And my mom was told, I heard this from my dad. He said, your mom doesn't want you to do it because it's too scary, it's too dangerous, she doesn't want anything to happen to you. But my dad told her, let her do it. Let her do what she wants. She'll be okay. Sorry, but
No,
my parents are gone, and they were always supportive. They always, I was very fortunate to grow up with both parents. Very fortunate to have a mom who said, go out there and be successful. Go to school. Whatever you want to do, be successful at it. And she used to say, whether it's being a housewife, being a worker, whatever you do, she said, be successful at it. Doesn't matter what you do. So that's what I was taught. And then my dad, he taught me how to check the oil in the car, how to change a tire, how to keep my house clean, my yard clean. You know, he taught me the stuff that I needed to know to be successful in the world. And he always supported us. He always took care of us, was always there for us. But anyway, so I decided to become a police officer. So my mom, she had met some people. She was a judge by then. So we had a peyote ceremony, and it was for me, so I could become a police officer. So that's what started my career. So I went and applied. because my mom was a judge in Tuba City at the time.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, she was a judge in Tuba City at the time. My dad was retired, so my dad was like her chauffeur and supporter and you know everything.
Yeah.
So I applied for Kayenta, and I applied. I always remember because it was in February. I applied on Monday, and by Friday they said you're hired.
Oh,
they
wow,
said,
that was fast.
yeah, because you have to go through a system. You
Yeah.
know, you have the application, you have a written exam, you have a physical agility test, and you have all these things that you have to go through.
Yeah.
So I did that, except for the physical part of it. But they really needed officers, and I guess they were getting officers to attend the Arizona Law Enforcement Training Academy in Tucson, and they had reserved some spaces for Navajo Nation.
Oh, that's cool.
So they had 10 slots to fill. So I got hired right away. I was talk about nervous, talk about scared, talk about what am I getting myself into.
Yeah.
So by Saturday, we're on our way to Tucson. 10 of us.
Dang.
10 of us were on our way to Tucson to the Law Enforcement Training Academy.
So were there any other women as part of that class?
I was the only one. I was the only one at the time.
So were there any, well, your mom went from the clerical to a judge. Were there any female police officers at the time? Was it pretty common?
There was. When I got back after training, in Kayenta District, there was, let's see, Darlene, Ella, I want to say 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
Because this was in 1989.
Okay.
So there wasn't very many female officers.
Yeah.
But in Kayenta, there was either 3 or 4 of them by the time I got there. But it's historically, law enforcement is a male profession.
Yes.
So
correct.
you have to learn to deal with that, learn to work in that environment.
Yeah.
And I was, talk about wet behind the ears when it comes to law enforcement. I was 25. I was 25 years old, single, no kids, no relationships, and I get into this world of solving people's problems, helping people, helping them to, arresting people, taking people's rights away from them, you know.
If they break the law.
Yeah, if they break the law.
Yeah.
And doing traffic stops, writing citations, all these different things we had to do. I was 25 years old, and I'm like that's when we started getting, probably for me, that's when I started learning about domestic violence. At the time, we didn't call it domestic violence. We'd go to calls with couples arguing.
Yeah.
Couples arguing, disagreeing, and unfortunately, when I think about it now, a lot of those calls I went to, a lot of it had to do with cheating, extramarital affairs, things like that. And it was, I think about it now, it was heartbreaking because it's like my mom, she would tell me, if you get married, this was her contingency plan for me. If I ever got married, she would say, have your own home, set yourself up, have your own things. So if it doesn't ever work out, you can tell him to leave, and he can't take anything.
And that culture kind of goes down to the husband moves in with the wife.
Yeah.
And moves in with the family.
Yes.
And then becomes a ranch hand.
Yes. And the helper.
And the helper,
everything.
Yeah. Okay,
and that's probably why the man goes to live with the woman. As a woman will have that support system. Our Navajo women have that support system. The house, we already have the home site. We already have, the things that we need to be successful in our marriage. So that's what my mom would tell me. But when your parents are giving you these stories, giving you these learning, teaching you teachings, they don't tell you why. So back then, you never asked why. You never needed to know the reason. You just sat and listened to your parents.
And you did it.
And you did it.
Yeah.
And you did it. Now it's different. And that, I believe, is really hurting our culture. It's really hurting our families. It's hurting our children. Because I go to the grocery store and I see a lot of kids being the boss. That's how my husband talks about it. You see kids in the store crying, screaming, yelling, getting mad at their mom and dad, even, you know, pushing them on the leg, however tall they are, getting mad, and they're the boss. And then the parent doesn't know how to deal with it. And that's really heartbreaking to me. Everything that while growing up, everything I was taught was it used to be there's a reason for it. There's a reason why it happened. There's a reason why you're going through what you're going through. There's a reason why good things are there. There's a reason why bad things are there. That's part of our culture too.
Yeah.
But along the way, I also learned they'd say there's a purpose for it. And I think that makes more sense, especially us being Navajos.
Yeah.
There's a purpose for it. There's a reason for everything, but that reason turns into a purpose. And we may not like it, we may not appreciate it. It may hurt, it may be exciting, it may be good for us, but sometimes we do forget the why.
Yeah. Yeah.
We do forget why is this? And we just either get so excited and forget people, or get so mad and forget people, or, you know, we don't have that balance anymore. So we're talking about why things happen and why we don't ask why when we were growing up. As your parents were the people you looked up to. Your parents are the people you learned from. The parents are the ones that taught you. So you don't question them. You know, even my grandma, I grew up with my grandma. I grew up with my Nully man. I grew up with my Nully lady, and grew up with both my parents. So my dad was strict. I learned he was one of the first Navajo Nation Rangers on our reservations. My mom would tell me a story and tell me that he walked in where she was working. She used to work a secretary for one of the chairmans at the time. And I guess my dad walked into her office and she was like, wow, my mom fell in love with this tall man in a uniform.
Yeah.
So my dad was real strict. I learned too that my Nully man, his dad was in the military in World War II. He was in the Marines. And I always wondered why my dad was so strict, why he was so hard on us, and that's probably why.
It's regimented and everything, yeah.
So when your parents talk to you, not to you, but with you, for you, to you, there's always a reason for it. There's always a purpose for it. And I've taken all those teachings that my parents had given to me, and I led my life that way, lived my life that way. And we didn't talk about this, but I'm married. I've been married to Eugene Arthur for 18 years now. And this is my second marriage. And my first son, I had him, then I had two sons in my first marriage. So when I got divorced at 40, I said, I have three sons, and look at Navajo culture and talk about purpose and why. Navajo culture, you don't raise kids without a father.
Yeah.
Especially males.
Yeah.
I had three sons, and my youngest was probably 5 years old. My middle son was probably 7, 8 years old. My oldest son was a teenager. So I thought, man, I have these three boys. I have these three Navajo males. I don't know about the male side. Yeah, I do, but it's not my teachings. They need a male. I have a cousin sister. She got remarried and she found her husband on a dating site because I was still a cop and didn't have a lot of time to date or, whatever. So I tried it. But I met Mr. Arthur through that website.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he was wastewater foreman for NTUA. I lived in Kanta. We started hitting off. And then I got promoted to lieutenant. My career went from being a police officer. I trained, I did field training, trained other officers. I was instructor at the police academy. But my ultimate goal when I became a police officer was I wanted to be chief of police. I really did. That was my goal. So I wanted to be a sergeant. And then I became a sergeant. And that was my gift to myself. At age 40, I became a sergeant. It's like, yeah. And then maybe a couple years later, I became a lieutenant. I applied. I went through the interviews. I went through the oral board. submitted my resume. I went through the whole 9 yards because, law enforcement is quasi-military.
Yeah, yeah.
So I went through the whole system and I got it. And I was the first one to go through the oral board.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all these people sitting there. And I was the only female who was going through the testing process.
Oh, wow.
And I walked into this meeting room. It was actually the room underneath the old library over here, just a little ways from us. And there was a guy from the state law enforcement. There was people from local government, Navajo Nation. There was these law enforcement people. And we walked in and they started asking questions. I had to introduce myself. And we had to tell them if we were going to be a lieutenant and run something, be in charge, how would we do it? Mm-hmm. So they gave us scenario questions. If you had this situation, what would you do? Mm-hmm. Talk about our leadership skills, talk about our knowledge. And then maybe, I don't know how many weeks later, days later, I got the notice that I got promoted to lieutenant. I was like, wow. And
that was a great birthday present.
Yeah, another time. I became lieutenant, and I was the only female lieutenant at the time. Mm-hmm. This was in 2006. Yeah, 2006. Okay. So I came out here to Window Rock, moved back to Window Rock. That's right at the same time I met Eugene. Mm-hmm. And he lived out here, and he had a house, and he was a single father. He raised all his kids on his own. Mm-hmm. And then so we met, and we ended up starting our journey of our relationship, and we eventually got married. Uh-huh. So now we've been married for 18 years. Uh-huh. So he helped me raise my sons, because I was not about to raise my sons. The Navajo teaching is you need to have both parents. Yep. So, and my boys needed a male role model. Mm-hmm. Gene was awesome. And then my parents taught us about our way of life, our Navajo traditions, our Navajo culture, our Navajo medicine men. Mm-hmm. Live your life that way. Our Democratic Party, the Democratic Party has changed since JFK. It's not the same. Mm-hmm. It's not the same party. Republicans are not perfect either. And me, I went from Democrat to Independent to Republican.
Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts as a woman in the United States about the Roe v. Wade?
Overturn.
Yeah, overturn, yes.
We got Trump elected. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say that you're the first person I've said this to, mm-hmm. and said it out loud. Mm-hmm. We got Trump elected.